Hi, this is Sir Ken Shelley from Adios, Fatso. Thank you for tuning in to the 10 Minutes with Boston Chris podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the 10 Minutes with Boston Chris podcast. I am your host, Boston Chris, and we have another great guest for the show this week. Guys, let me introduce y'all to Miss America 2019 and 2020. Miss Tiara Pennington. I'm going to read a little bit from her bio, and then we will get right into the conversation with Miss Tiara. And I hope you guys really liked the interview this week. If you do, make sure you like the video, comment down below what you liked about it, and of course, you can always subscribe to the channel or follow the Spotify channel to see and hear more like this episode here. Appreciate you guys for checking us out. Tiara Pennington was Miss Alabama 2019 and 2020 and competed at Miss America, where she was a top 7 finalist. Tiara was Miss Alabama's Outstanding Teen in 2016 and placed in the top 8 at the national competition. She has completed extensive volunteer work with the National Psoriasis Foundation and received national awards. She graduated summa cum laude from the University of Alabama with her Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science and History. Currently, Tiara is pursuing her Juris Doctorate from the University of Alabama School of Law and will graduate in May of 2025, which is coming up very quickly. Pennington is the daughter of Dawn Lee and Deidre Eastland Pennington of Helena. Her mother, Deidre, reigned as Miss Dixie in 1986, as Miss Music Hall of Fame in 1987, and Miss Leeds Area in 1988. She was the third runner-up to Angela Callahan in the 1986 Miss Alabama pageant. Tiara competed in the Miss Alabama Outstanding Teen pageant in 2014 as Miss Tennessee Valley Outstanding Teen. The following year, she competed as Miss Shelby County Outstanding Teen. In 2016, she came into the competition as Miss Metropolitan Outstanding Teen and won that crown. She entered the Outstanding Teen pageant again in 2017 and finished in the top 11. Pennington graduated from Helena High School and enrolled at the University of Alabama in 2017, majoring in political science. In 2019, Pennington was crowned Miss University of Alabama, the very first black competitor to win that title. At the Miss Alabama pageant, she won the Talent Preliminary Award with her performance of Nessun Dorma from the opera Turandot. Or is it Turandot? Somebody let me know out there. Her social impact initiative was the Helena-based Psoriasis Take Action Alabama Support Group, benefiting the National Psoriasis Foundation. She was crowned Miss Alabama on June 8th, and she finished in the top 7, as we said, of the 2020 Miss America competition. The 2020 Miss Alabama pageant was canceled due to the 2020 coronavirus pandemic, so Pennington's reign as Miss Alabama was extended for an extra year. We are super excited to share this candid, amazing conversation with Tiara Pennington about all of the things we just talked about and much, much more. I think you guys will really like this one. Let's get into it right now. Hey guys, welcome to another fantastic episode of the 10 Minutes with Boston Chris podcast. And we're sitting here today with an old friend. I met Tiara in, I think, 2018 or 2017. I'm pretty sure it was 18. And it was
Yes,
just before everything went nutso for you. I think at the time you were Miss Tennessee Valley, if I remember correctly. And
you are correct.
but we have Tiara Pennington here on the Boston Chris Show, which is pretty dope. Thank you so much for coming on, Tiara. How have you been?
Well, thank you so much for having me on. And a lot has happened since the last time we were able to see each other in person. A lot of craziness has gone on just from what happened right after I got to meet with you in my own personal life, and I think just in the world in general.
Oh man, yeah, but that was just before COVID, a couple years before COVID, and COVID really kind of changed your life, not just from having it, but also it kind of changed the dynamic of what you ended up becoming. And I definitely want to get into that. But first question, always to break the ice: what's your favorite drink right now?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm interning this summer because I'm heading into my last year of law school. So Really, it's really bad. Caffeine. So I'm going to have to go with Starbucks coffee, either Starbucks or Dunkin', anything,
What's the
anything. And I always get a shot of espresso now. That's been of late to give me a little extra boost for the long days that I usually have ahead of me. So definitely anything from Starbucks. I try to keep up with all the fun drinks that people come out with and try to recommend on social media. And usually they're pretty good. So if you have any recommendations for Starbucks or Dunkin' drinks, let me know because that's my favorite right now. But
so
usually I do anything
you're like the special edition girl. Then something new comes out, you have to try it immediately, right?
right, especially in the fall when school's starting back up and they come out with all the cute little fall drinks and fall flavors that you can try. So that's been my thing, my favorite drinks thus far.
Yeah, I feel like the fall gets all the love with peppermint and pumpkin spice and all of these other things between the fall and early winter. It's funny, you mentioned caffeine. I just started drinking coffee like 2 years ago. I'm 47.
Really?
I hated it my entire life, but like now it's like just the appetite suppressant is worth the price of admission. You know what I mean?
I get that.
uh,
I get
uh, So again, thank you so much for your time today. I know how busy you are. Like you said, last year of your doctorate right now, which is holy crap, man! You got to be excited to get that over with.
I am very excited to get it over with. It's a crazy journey and experience. So I'm really excited for schools to start back up in just a couple of weeks. But at the same time, I know what's ahead,
Mm.
especially already having 2 years under my belt. So I'm like, ooh, but it just it's going to make the journey even more sweeter at the end when I'm finally completely done. And that's going to be the best day ever.
All right, so let's start from the beginning, I guess. First of all, tell us where you grew up, and then kind of tell us how your story began with what you ended up doing as an adult.
Sure. So my hometown where I grew up, a little small town called Helena, Alabama, about 30 minutes south of Birmingham. And this has truly been my home. I'm here right now. This is where I come to. This is my safe place. And I love always coming back because we've evolved so much. I feel like any small town nowadays has evolved. I'm super excited. We have a Chick-fil-A now. So I love going to the
Oh,
Chick-fil-A and the Dunkins and some other things that they're starting to build up in this area. And it's just beautiful. I went here from pre-K all the way up, graduating in high school. And I just had the best memories here, especially when I got into pageantry. And that was a big part of my teenage life going into my early 20s. So all of this started really with my whole family, really starting with my mom, who competed in the Miss Alabama organization back in the 80s. And when she competed her first year out, she ended up being in the top five. There were 60 girls that year at the Miss Alabama
wow.
competition. And she was the first African American to make it into the top five at that time. So I knew I had really big shoes to fill if I
Yeah.
ever wanted to compete in the Miss Alabama and Miss America organization. My mother never ended up actually winning Miss Alabama, but she always kept the love and gave that love to me about the program and the different scholarship opportunities. So just from her not even winning the title of Miss Alabama, she was able to graduate from the University of North Alabama completely debt free. And
Hmm.
she never won Miss Alabama, never went to Miss America. And my mom is a performer, just like I'm a performer. So she won lots of talent competitions. She loved performing at Miss Alabama. So I knew that if I ever wanted to do this, like I mentioned before, it would be really big shoes to fill. And I was really nervous. And I thought, wow, just looking at my mom and her journey and how I just looked up to her, and she's still the biggest role model and influence in my life, to thinking if she never won, I just never have a chance.
Right,
And
right.
then growing up and going to the Miss Alabama competition every single year, really from the time that I can remember as a young girl, all the women were just so eloquent, so beautiful. But then when you got to spend time with them behind stage, I ended up in the Rising Star program, which is a mentoring program in the organization. And they were just so down to earth. And I thought, wow, they're my best friends and they're still able to be so cool and have this cool talent. And I said, you know what? I want to do this one day. And so my first step to doing that, of course, I had the wonderful opportunity of having my mother to help me with all her years of experience being in the organization. And ending up being a director herself of her own local pageant. I decided, like I mentioned, I was in Rising Stars, which gave me a little peek at what was to come. And then eventually they had the teen competition for young teenagers. So I started in that. I competed in the teen program for 3 years.
Wow.
And on my third try, I was able to win. I won as Miss Metropolitan's Outstanding Teen, and I won at 16 years old, going on 17 when I gave up the title. So just being so young, I thought, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this at this young age. I mean, I'm still having to go back to high school for my senior year. So that was a really cool experience, and getting to go to Miss America's Outstanding Teen, where I ended up being able to get into the top 8 there at that national competition. And I'm an opera singer, so getting to perform was also a wonderful memory, and getting to see and hang out with so many other young teenagers, because for so long I felt like an outsider in school because I just felt so different. I didn't always want to do what everyone else wanted to do. So it was really cool to find a group of young women who were teenagers who I could always keep this connection with. And it was really cool to say that I had friends in all these different states too when I got back to my last year of high school. So after I came back from Miss America's Outstanding Teen, I finished out my senior year of high school at Helena High School. And I thought, you know what? That gave me the boost that I needed to really know that I can do this. And once I got all of my scholarship money, I'm sorry, my puppy's in
No,
the
you're good.
background.
You're good.
My
That's
puppy's in the background. I don't want him to disturb us.
no. I do another show, another podcast, and she's got like a 170-pound Great Dane that's like the mascot of the show. He always makes an appearance, so it's all good. Yeah, it's all good.
Okay, so if you hear anything, that's my little Yorkie having a little shout out here on the podcast. But I gained a lot of scholarship money, a full ride after winning Miss Alabama's Outstanding Teen to any university and any college here in the
Wow.
state of Alabama. And then going to Miss America's Outstanding Teen, I gained more scholarship money that I could use when I was deciding on where I wanted to go for college and to go into higher education. So came back, I thought, now that I don't have to worry about paying for school, I'm just going to do this for fun now. And that's exactly what I did. I literally, after that experience of competing on a national stage, I was ready for Miss Alabama. I was ready and I was excited to be back home, but a little bit nervous because I thought, I don't know how I will do in what I like to call the big girl pageants, because I was so used to competing with teenagers. And so anyway, I went in my first year at Miss Alabama, ended up being first runner up
Wow.
that year, and was scared to death as I stood up there with Miss Alabama at that time, Callie Walker, when she won, because I thought, I am not ready for this. I was only 19 years old at the time, and I thought, I just really wanted to try this out and just see how well I would do. I didn't think I was going to do this well at all, but ended up being first runner up. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to definitely go back next year. I did. And that's when you met me, though, right before I went to Miss Alabama as Miss Tennessee Valley.
Right. And I
So
remember
my
us
first
talking
year.
about that when you were telling us that you were going to Miss Alabama the next year.
Yes.
So this is a second generation passion for you, first of all, and I want to talk about that with your mom here in a minute, because that like you said, big shoes to fill. But I want to ask you a question about that. But before we get to that one, I want to know again, like the pageant world, you start so young. It's like gymnastics for young girls.
Right.
Like the earlier you get into it, the more you're acclimated to the world, and the more adjusted you will be when it's time to place and even win. My question for you is, did that replace a big chunk of what you could have had a childhood, or like do you have any regrets? I guess is the question. Looking back at it.
Absolutely not. I really feel like it gave me the childhood that I was seeking. I mean, I have wonderful parents. I grew up in a wonderful household where they never pressured me to compete in pageants. And I know a lot of people have, unfortunately, negative experiences with competing in
Right.
pageants. Especially if you're looking at role models and examples of toddlers and tiaras. My experience was nothing like that. When I first started in Miss in the teen program, I was a teenager. I was around 14, getting ready to be 15 years old. So I was old enough to definitely make my own decisions at that
Right.
time because I was doing something positive. And my parents definitely encouraged me to do something positive with my life and to get into an organization where I could connect with other young girls who were trying to go down the same path that I was trying to go down, where I knew that I would love to do this with pageants and to compete and to get to wear beautiful dresses. But I also had the opportunity to create my own community service initiative where I was helping others who had psoriatic disease, like my
Mm-hmm.
mother, which is
Yep.
something that a lot of teenagers couldn't really maybe say at that young age. So I definitely have no regrets because I definitely wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have been able to be Miss Alabama. I tell people all the time, had I not had that experience as a teenager, and I wouldn't be getting ready to graduate from law school had I not had all the scholarship opportunities and just the
Right.
confidence to continue on.
I love it. It's such a cool story. But I mean, starting at 14, some would say that's starting late in that world. You know what I'm saying? Like you mentioned toddlers and tiaras. Like that's the typical journey in pageantry. I feel is like they start so small. I also imagine in the industry that you have to lose a lot before you ever even come close to winning. So I guess the question here is, what did the losing teach you? Not just as a young lady, but as a competitor. And ultimately, what did the winning teach you as well?
I was very fortunate where I had a journey through pageants where I really loved it so much. And really, I tell everyone that there's so many amazing young women that come through this organization that never win. And they do lose a lot. And you can see, oh, wow, they would be a wonderful representative because it's all about community service, giving back, and having someone that's really relatable and they never win. But I had those moments where even though I did pretty well in the state competitions, I wouldn't win, Miss Alabama or Miss Alabama's Outstanding Teen. I would have to go back and start all over
Right.
again. And when
Yep.
I had to start that journey at the local, there would be times where first year teen, when I competed at Miss Alabama's Outstanding Teen, I ended up being second runner up. And then I went back, of course, to start this journey all over again. And I did not win at all. I didn't get a thing. I didn't even place or get a runner up position
Mm-hmm.
at the local. And it took me a couple of tries before I got back there. So, what I learned from that experience is that you really have to believe in yourself. And it's already hard enough because everyone's going to have their own opinions of maybe what you should do, what you should look like, what your talent should be.
Yep.
Maybe they have different criticisms about you. And that's really hard to hear or maybe hear from others, even if they don't say it to you directly at a young age. And and thankfully, like I've mentioned, I've had a wonderful support system and still do in my family that always told me, you believe in yourself, you can do this. And regardless of what the judges may feel or think about you, you are still Tiara at the end of the day, regardless of
Mm-hmm.
whether you walk away from winning. So that's what I gained a lot of confidence to know that a lot of the times before you become successful in whatever you're trying to conquer, you're going to fail sometimes in your
Mm-hmm.
mind. You're going to lose, but you gain
Absolutely.
so much.
And you have your mom there as well as an ambassador and an asset to you in knowing of what she went through. She can tell you her experiences. You can trust her because she's your mom. You know she's going to give it to you straight. So you had that asset. That's a huge thing to have, I feel, when you're under a microscope all the time. Like at least you can commiserate with somebody and get advice from somebody who's been under that microscope as well. You know?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
one of the reasons I'm really excited to have Tiara here is the opportunity to chat with her. All obviously in this space, but she's such a. I'm gonna say some things that are nice about you, Tiara. Stay humble now,
Thank
okay?
you. Thank you.
She's such a trailblazing pioneer to me. I've read your story, and you were just some stats, so our viewers will know. You were the first ever Miss University of Alabama, first Black University of Alabama, Miss University of Alabama, the second ever Black Miss Alabama. If I'm correct me if I'm
That's
wrong.
correct. That's correct.
And I have so much I want to ask you here because there's so much education you can give. I feel, but let's start with this one. What is it like looking back at your accomplishments now and knowing that you yourself have knocked down so many walls for other people? How does that feel looking back at that?
It feels Absolutely amazing. And I'm very honored when someone comes up to me and tells me that I'm a trailblazer, because really loving this organization and having a mother who went through the organization, I could see a lot behind the scenes. And there were a lot of women of color who came before me that competed in Miss University of Alabama that would have and should have won, in my opinion, but didn't get that opportunity. So to me, they're the trailblazers, because without them, I would not have been able to be the first. But there were a lot of firsts, I feel like, that came before me. But what I gained from that experience and what I learned, I'm very honored, of course. But I always said when I was Miss University of Alabama that even though I was the first, I definitely never wanted to be the first and only. I
Right.
wanted there to continue to be young women of color that went through the organization and would win this title. And unfortunately, there hasn't been any to win Miss University of Alabama, even though we've had wonderful Miss University of Alabamas since my time. But it wasn't only but a couple of years before we got another
Yep.
Black Miss Alabama, which
Let's
was
go.
so beautiful to
Yep.
be there and to experience that whole journey. And I'm so proud of her, Bree Burrell.
Mm.
She just gave up her title a couple weeks ago to our new reigning Miss Alabama, Abby Stockard. And it's just wonderful because now that I've been a couple years out of the organization, I actually got to travel with Bree Burrell on a couple of her appearances. And so it was wonderful to get to feel like some part of that Miss Alabama journey I got to
Mm.
have with her again, and also to just see her shine and do such a wonderful job of representing us here in the state and nationally. And so that is such a wonderful feeling.
So here's a question for you. I don't even have this on the outline, and a lot of times the best questions come from the conversation. So you're a young lady. You're coming up in the system. You're obviously different, right? You're not the typical winner, let's say. I mean, obviously, if there's only been one or two or whatever before you, do you feel like that added more pressure to you that than would be on a normal contestant, so to speak? Like, do you feel like it was even harder for you personally to try to break those walls?
Absolutely. I don't know if you've heard this, but I hear this all the time, especially being a Black woman, that it's really hard sometimes to achieve goals that you don't see anyone else that looks like you to achieve
Exactly.
those goals and
Right.
to be in those roles. So that was difficult, although I did have a beautiful Miss Alabama to look up to, who was the first Black Miss Alabama, Kaylin Chapman James
Right.
now.
Right.
And that was a wonderful role model for me through my time. But there hadn't been another one since her in such a long time. She won back in 1993, and I did not win Miss Alabama until 2019. So I definitely had this out of pressure, especially looking up to my mother, who was wonderful every time that she competed at Miss Alabama and never got that opportunity as a Black woman, thinking, will I ever be able to do this? Will I ever be crowned? And if this is what I truly want, I have to work extremely hard at it. And
Right.
so sometimes you feel you have to work 10 times as harder to achieve something when those examples aren't right in front of your face.
Do you feel like that added tenacity to you that another girl may not have had in the same situation? Did you have added tenacity?
I definitely had drive always, and I definitely had a confidence boost just from already having a state title in the state as a teenager, that I could do this.
Right.
And really, the year that I won as Miss University of Alabama, becoming Miss Alabama, I was traveling so many different places in the state of Alabama already that I felt like, I could rock this job and I would
Yep.
love every aspect of it. So that definitely probably added to it a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. So, I mean, maybe last question on this: do you think things are changing in the industry when it comes to diversity, to include a more inclusive environment? Firstly, and what more do you feel needs to be done to be more inclusive within the system, not just in your home state, but I guess globally?
I definitely think that a lot has changed. I think we're moving in a positive direction, especially with the Miss America organization, just because that's the organization that I have the most experience in. I know that there's a lot of different pageant organizations out there, but the year actually I competed at Miss America, it was called Miss America 2.0. So it was still the Miss America organization, but we had gotten rid of swimsuit competition to not be so focused on the outside appearance of walking around in a swimsuit, but more on the intellect that these Miss Alabama, as well as Miss America contestants have had all along. And so that was a great experience for me, because something that I feel that gets lost within the Miss America organization is our community service efforts and how we work so hard. And so my year being Miss Alabama and going to Miss America, that was a really big focus and something that we hadn't had in a long time. And we focused more on who is the best representative, who can be someone that can relate to everyone and that every young woman, young man can look up to be a positive light and a role model in a world that oftentimes may not always have those positive role models. And I think that's all that can be shown as well in the Miss Alabama organization. But there's always room to improve. There's always room for changes, because unfortunately, sometimes we see still today young girls who come out just whether they're in the Miss America organization or not, who have concerns or voice different opinions about the way that they've been treated within the organization that they have competed in. And just the talk that surrounds them and the negativity that I think definitely needs to change, because it's such a wonderful organization, and anything that a woman's trying to do to better her life and to get out there and be in such a public light is not easy. So any way that we can be more encouraging towards young women, we should do that. And I think that's something that we definitely need to see a continued change on.
Encouraging and empowering young women.
Absolutely.
I completely agree with you. So a little bit, let's get away from some of the deep stuff just for a moment. So what does it look like behind the scenes for a beauty pageant contestant? First of all, do you have a team with you that's helping you make decisions, or are all the decisions yours? I imagine the final decisions are yours, but you probably have advisors, right?
Right. I definitely have a team. When I was Miss Alabama, I had the whole Miss Alabama board of directors who were so encouraging and helpful to get all my wardrobe together. So this is all the fun stuff, but it also can be very detailed oriented, where you are working on an interview. You're working with other mock judges to help you and to prepare you for on stage questions for that private interview with the judges, as well as making sure you look your best. And Miss Nan Tenenbaum, who is the president over the Miss Alabama organization, she definitely wanted me to look and feel my best when I was going out as Miss Alabama and also competing at Miss America. So I definitely had a team. They always wanted my input, because she wanted me to feel good in everything that I was doing, because at the end of the day, I only have this one opportunity to be Miss Alabama and to go to Miss America and to be a role model to others. So it definitely was a fun time, but I did not do it alone, and I had a lot of help and support.
I ask that question simply because, as an observer, I have seen some pageants in the past that just lacked personality. You know what I'm saying? You have all of these young ladies that are out there trying to be noticed, and yet they all sounded and looked like machines to me. And I feel like that personality, more recently, I've seen more personality in these shows. So I was just curious why that might be. Like I said, I used to see the mechanical, almost like a conveyor belt of women. But now you guys are allowed to shine a little bit more. What changed in that aspect? Was there a change at all for that to happen?
I really think that sometimes it may be some of that behind the scenes work. And I hope that maybe now, as we get into more and more of modern era where we're using more of social media and technology, and we're talking about how those are usually the highlight reels of our lives where we want people
Yep.
to see. But there's also times where you see vulnerability, and you're getting to see now a lot of these local title holders, even before they may win their state title and go to Miss America, that they are showing you their everyday process and their steps, and showing you what they look like before they even get to their state competitions, which I think is such a vulnerable but authentic thing to do, especially as a young woman, to show that this is the final product that you may see when the lights and the shows and everything is coming to a complete 100 and you're ready to go. But that there's a lot of times where you may doubt yourself.
Yep.
You feel like, I don't know if I should choose this talent. I don't know if I like this dress. there are those moments that you doubt. And so I love that we're seeing more of that today. And I think that's the biggest change from even 5 years ago when I was Miss Alabama.
And now, with the 24/7 accessibility world, with the advent of social media and the internet, everybody has a phone, everybody's a director, everybody's a producer, everybody's a content creator. So it's so hard to hide behind a system now, because everybody is showing the behinds of all the systems. That's why wrestling doesn't work quite as well anymore, right? Because it's like
Right.
people realize this is scripted. This is a movie, essentially. Like, if you took film and sports, that's wrestling. But 20 years ago, everybody thought these guys hated each other. But you know what I'm saying? But anyway, in the talent portion you mentioned your talent was as an opera singer. When you're younger, I mean, I would imagine before you even decide to do the pageant world, you have to understand and ferret out what your talent is. Which came first for you, the talent or the pageant?
The talent. The talent definitely came first before I decided to compete in any pageant, especially in the Miss Miracle organization, where we do have talent as a phase of competition. I love to perform, and really, I got that love to perform once again from my mother, who was a
Mm-hmm.
performer. She wasn't an opera singer, but she was always there to guide me in the right direction and to tell me the truth about everything. And so we worked very well together. And I did show choir like crazy growing up. I loved it so much. And I always say this, but Mr. Andrews is his name, and he was my choral director in middle school. And he was the one who really encouraged me in my gift. Because when you're not really sure about something, you're thinking, maybe I need to perform in front of somebody at least once to see how this relates to other people,
Yeah.
and maybe not just the people at home. And I always say he was like the choral director off of Glee, because he was always so much fun and he encouraged everyone. But he saw something in me that maybe at that time I did not see in myself. And he encouraged me. And I ended up being one of the soloists that he picked to compete at the regional competitions when we would all go for those show choir competitions. And I love that. And that's where it really started, from just trying a little bit out here and there at home with my mom, and then venturing out in middle school and competing in show choir. And then right from there, it wasn't too long after that I got into deciding, okay, now if I'm going to compete in the Miss Alabama organization, I need a talent, and what is it going to be? And that was always fun preparing for that.
It sounds like that was built in for you already then. Like, it was like life was preparing you for what was to come, right? So,
Right.
so you were crowned Miss Alabama during not during, but just prior to the outbreak of COVID. And as a result of the pandemic, you were the only Miss Alabama to serve 2 years, because 2020 was canceled. How do you feel your reign might have differed from a normal reign because of COVID?
Well, one, that's obvious. The longest serving Miss Alabama,
Mm-hmm.
as you mentioned. But during that time, it was such a trying time. Thankfully, I'd already competed at Miss America. So I was just coming really back home to finish serving out my time as Miss Alabama and to enjoy the last couple of months. But as you mentioned, unfortunately, we got hit with COVID-19, the COVID pandemic. And I turned into virtual Miss Alabama. So I had to learn how to still connect with my community, still be out there to make sure that no one forgot about the Miss Alabama and the Miss Miracle organization. So I became very creative about reaching out to those, but also using that time to really let people know that this is serious and we should not take this lightly, and that we want everyone to be safe during this time until we eventually find vaccines and other things to make us safer again, where we can go out and have those times where we're together again. Thankfully, we're having those times right now. We didn't know at that moment. It was very scary how long this all would be, especially being in lockdown. So I
Mm-hmm.
spent a whole other year really trying to figure out not only how to be Miss Alabama, but it was also time for me to go back to school. Because at the time that I won Miss Alabama, I was getting ready to go into my junior year of college. But because the duties of Miss Alabama take up a lot of time. I took off a year and then I was going to go back. So I was juggling not only being virtual Miss Alabama, as I say, but also being a student as well, which is a little bit different than what we've seen in the past and what we see now.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because I witnessed all of that as your friend on Facebook, seeing your vocability about, I don't even know if that's a word. I don't even know, but just being vocal about safety and masking and vaccinating and all of those things. And those things were so politically charged then and even now. I mean, people had opinions about everything. So I guess the question here is, as somebody with a platform, you have a platform, you have a podium, so to speak, to voice your opinion. How quickly did it take you? I guess that's not the right question. Was there a thought process beforehand of, you know what, I'm going to talk about this regardless of the politics of the situation because I know that people are listening to me because of the platform I have? Was there a strategy for that, or did you just, you know what, I'm jumping into this. This is the right thing to do? What was the thought process for you at the time?
My thought process definitely was that we need someone out there who are telling people the truth about safety and trying to get out there that we want everyone to be safe. And to be safe, you have to follow these protocols. You should follow these protocols. And these aren't silly things. These aren't things to punish us, but to keep us safe. And I did have to really just get to the point before I even started posting and getting that information out there about vaccines and wearing masks and social distancing, that regardless of what anyone may have to say negatively about what I'm saying, that I'm still going to say it because I strongly believe in facts
Mm-hmm.
and science and making sure that we all are safe so we can go back to what some type of normalcy.
Exactly right, and I commend you so much during that time because I saw the blowback you were getting from a deep red state. We're not going to talk politics here, but you were getting some blowback from that because science, in my opinion, and I'm sure you may agree. I don't know. Science is not political. Science is what it is. It's the facts, and science is ever changing as well. So the facts as we know them now may not be the facts as we know them in 2 weeks. And sometimes you just have to go with the flow and do the best that you can with the information you have. And that
Right.
was where you were coming from at the time. But to see so much blowback and how you handled it is kind of why I wanted to ask these questions now. I've been looking forward to this interview for a good 4 years, Tiara. I don't know if you know that, but yeah, this is a long time coming for me. I've been excited about talking to you for a while. Just a little background. I know this is not about you, but we started. Well, I had a podcast that ended around the time that you and I met. And so I had you on my final wish list of that show back then. And so when I stopped, I kept that wish list. And I added to it over the years, even though I was like, you know what, I'm never doing this again. You know what I mean? But then when I started feeling some kind of passion for wanting to do this again, I had that list still, and your name was right there. So I was like, man, I got to get Tiara on here. Just her insight. Just such an inspiring woman, and I'm excited to talk to you. Anyway,
You.
no more fangirling. When you go to compete nationally for Miss America, I know this is probably a cookie cutter question that you've answered a lot in your time, but tell us about the pressure that must exist for a small town Alabama girl to now be. I imagine you were probably what? Was it Vegas that you went to?
I did not go to Vegas. They changed it and it was in Connecticut.
Oh, right.
Huntersville, Connecticut, right before Christmas. So I was
Right.
very cold. So not only small town Alabama girl, but small town Alabama girl used to humidity and the heat.
The first thing she
Even when
talks
it's
about is the
Christmas,
cold. I love it.
yes, even when it's Christmas, it's only sometimes like 75 here, 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And the wind, when I stepped out and finally made it to the hotel, the wind literally cut me in half. I felt like
Yes.
the wind cut me
Oh
into
man.
pieces. And I thought, yep, it's time to go inside. I'm ready to go home. It's cold. It's Christmas time. But yes, I had a lot of pressure and a lot of winter pressure as well from learning the different ropes about Connecticut.
That's amazing. So I'm from Massachusetts originally. So hearing somebody experiencing Northeast winter for the first time is always great. Um, short story about that. My ex-wife, when she's originally from Texas, she's the reason why I'm in Texas now. But her and I moved up to Massachusetts when we were still very young, and she had never seen snow
Wow.
before. And so the first snowstorm, it was due to snow like 6 hours. We were supposed to get like 18 inches, right? So like an hour and a half into this storm, she's just out playing in it and shoveling the driveway and all this stuff. And by the end of the storm, she was ready to move anywhere because like every time she would shovel the driveway, the plow would come along and just move all the snow back into the driveway. It was just so much fun watching that from the window.
Oh my gosh.
Her
No, that was
just
me. We had, when I was at Miss America, we had two alerts that there was a whiteout. Of course, I was getting ready for the Miss America, the show to be live on NBC. So I couldn't really see what was happening outside, but we got those alerts. And I thought, what is this? But I know it's not good. So it must be a lot of snow and a winter storm coming through.
sounds like you just had bad luck because normally it doesn't hit Northeast until like late January, February. Like a December storm is kind of unusual up there.
Really? Oh
Yeah,
my,
yep. I remember one year we had an April Fool's storm where we had like 36 inches of snow on April 1st. Yeah.
that was fun, I'm sure.
Oh, it was a blast. Mother Nature likes to remind you, right? Like even here in the South, like you're used to like when summer is over, you're like, oh, finally summer is over, and then Mother Nature will just sneak in another 8 days of summer, through the door without you expecting it. It's always that way, no matter which extreme you're at.
Yes.
So tell us, try to tell us the best story that you have from your time competing for Miss America.
Oh my goodness, there's so many. I know we kind of got a little sidetracked about pressure when I got into the snowstorm bit, but honestly, I think getting to be on national TV is one of the best stories that I can tell and remember at the moment since it's been a couple of years. Of course, you always have the memories of the little things about the wonderful pancakes that I would have with the other Miss America contestants every morning, every morning, because they had a buffet in the hotel and that's where they were feeding us, a buffet. So we were going there for breakfast, for lunch. I think the only reason we didn't go for dinner is because it was time for us to compete. At that time, we were always stuffed anyway. But I'll never forget, like, all of us trying to help each other make these wonderful, like, pumpkin pancakes.
Mm,
And still to this day, I always say, I want to have those pumpkin pancakes again. That's always a fun memory. And just going to Miss America and getting to be on national television, you do have that quick couple of seconds where you get to be on national television to introduce yourselves. But the year I competed, they were going to introduce the top 15 who were going to be in the top 15 one more time. But it was only going to be the top seven that were going to actually get to compete. And we're going to get a score that was going to carry over
right.
from competition week. And so I was able and the lucky one to actually make it into the top seven. And I remember I was the last one called right after commercial at NBC. And I was backstage. There was Mario, who was one of the hosts. And that was always a blast getting to go out and be on stage and think, wow, all the people from Alabama who are back home around their Christmas tree and their Christmas decorations are watching me right now. And I hope that I'm making them proud. And I also remember I just have a host of stories because I have so many memories, but another story or something fun. I got to actually do what I like to call a mini TED Talk, which was a new phase of competition
Mm,
that really replaced the swimsuit competition. And so that gave us a time to actually talk about our community service initiative, which mine is dealing with psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. And I was so nervous because if you went over time, they would ding you. And I think they dinged someone right, of course, before I went out there. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's going to happen to me. But at that moment, I really felt so empowered. That's a term we use all the time in the Miss Miracle organization. But I thought, wow, I have come such a long way from that 14, 15-year-old teenager who was scared to death to walk out on stage, who was worried about interview, who was worried about every little thing. And here I am talking about something that now I've had a couple of years of experience in, and everyone seems so captivated by what I'm saying. And that was just the best memory, because I got to share my mother's story, my uncle's story, who suffer with both psoriatic diseases, on national television. And so that was a great memory. And my mom, she came up to me, she said, that was the only phase of competition that I got teary-eyed about, because I just felt like, wow, that's my daughter up there talking
Yep.
for such a long time about all these technical medical terms and just captivating the audience. So that was a fun memory as
I love
well.
that, and that's part of the personality that I was talking about earlier that has been added into these competitions. Removing the swimsuit and actually letting y'all speak is a big change, in my opinion. Let's. You talked about your mom again. Let's get into your mom. So your mom came before you. I talked about how big of an asset that is for you as a young competitor. But I also feel like that could be kind of a detriment as well, because that pressure is there, that ring is there, and you're always trying to reach that ring. So I guess the question here is, when did you feel like you had fulfilled her shadow, her footsteps? When did you feel like you were equal, or did that ever happen for you?
That has never happened. Even though my mom never became Miss Alabama, I always still hold my mom on such a high pedestal, because I feel like she has done so much for the organization. And now she's actually a board member for Miss Alabama, for the Miss Alabama organization. And I think it's so deserved. And I'm so happy to see her in that role. But I think where I actually felt like, okay, this is maybe the end of this journey, and now I get to just really enjoy it. And I'm so happy that I feel like I went along this journey with my mother. I think when the night that I won Miss Alabama, and it was so funny, because anyone who is a volunteer of the Miss Alabama organization stays for a really long time, as long as they can. So we have these wonderful backstage moms that help all of us during the week of Miss Alabama, and they're with us through tears, through nerves, through everything when we doubt ourselves. And that same pageant mom has been around since my mother competed. And she came up to me after my first year competing at Miss Alabama, and she said, well, look at that. You did better than your mama. Your first year, you got first runner up. And I thought, well, not that you say that. So that was also a boost of confidence that I didn't think about, which
Take
is
that,
always so
mom.
fun to do. But I wouldn't have gotten there without her. So, but that was funny that she came up to me and said that, just knowing my mom for so long and then getting to see me compete now.
Well, first of all, congratulations on all of your success. It's very well deserved. Now, we talked off air a little bit about this question, and just to make sure that you were aware of the situation. But have you heard about some of the controversy involving National American Miss contestant Sara Milliken and the body shaming criticism that she's received? How do you feel about that situation, if you know anything about it at all?
I feel, one, that it's very sad that we today in 2024 are still having young women who are trying to do something positive and are doing something positive, not only in their lives, but in other young women and young men who look up to them and could care less about all these superficial things. And I think in the pageant industry, that's what we focus on so much. And we put a highlight on that, on all these things that are so superficial. And really, what we should be talking about is the accomplishments that she's already achieved. And I just think it's really sad and disappointing that we're at this stage still in 2024. And I think we need to just think about uplifting her and supporting her as much as we can, because unfortunately, everyone's always going to have their opinions, whether we like them or not,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how negative or positive they may be. And I think we just all need to uplift her and make sure that she's getting the support that she deserves and that she needs at this time. And hopefully one day, maybe they'll be more focused on the role that she stepped into and making sure that she is that, really, that role model that's able to go out and to speak and connect with other people and to make a difference in other people's lives. And I'm absolutely sure she's already doing that. And if she's doing that, then she's already accomplished everything that she needs to worry about.
And you talked about it earlier about young girls and looking up on the stage and envisioning somebody who looks like you. And if you can't envision that, then why should you even bother? And this is that same situation. If you have a young girl who's overweight and being bullied and all of that because everybody is so ugly, I say nowadays, but really it's been like that all the time, right? People are just
Right.
ugly. So if that young girl who might be overweight doesn't see somebody who looks like her having success on a place or in a place that she may want to travel herself, she's just going to avoid the voyage. And that in itself is the sad part of the story, I feel.
Absolutely. And I think a thing that a lot of people miss is that they look so much at what they feel is fit. They come up with their own description of what that looks like.
What normal
And
is.
what normal is.
Right.
And as long as she's fit and healthy, that's all that we need to that's all that needs to be said. As long as she's healthy and she's doing well and she's able to complete her role, like I mentioned, of just being that role model out in
Mm-hmm.
society and fulfilling her year and her year of service. And as long as she's healthy and living a healthy lifestyle, I think that's always important, that we shouldn't focus solely on maybe what we think someone should look like, but whether we're teaching other people to care about, what they put into their body and that they are living a healthy lifestyle where they can just hopefully live longer, have a better year of
Yep.
service, and to be able to pour into others and to give other people a journey of being fit and healthy, and not so much of this is what size you need to be for me to think you deserve this role.
I love that. I love it. Yeah, absolutely. Just staying on this kind of trend of advice and education for people that may be coming up in the system, what advice do you have for young girls and women who might be thinking, number one, who might be thinking of entering the industry, or number two, who might currently be struggling with their time in the industry?
One thing that's honestly helped me, I know that it's been about 5 years now since I've competed, but something that I've learned just being in an industry that is male dominated still today, trying to go into law,
Law.
get a
Yep.
law degree. One thing that I keep telling myself is that your future self will thank you. And in the Miss America organization, anyone who has passed through as either Miss Alabama or just a local contestant who maybe never won that title or had that opportunity at that moment, I've never had anyone come up to me and said, "Man, I regret even getting into this, that this has not changed my life whatsoever," whether that is they gain scholarship money just from showing up to Miss Alabama, even if they don't place or do anything. And then, as I've told you about our community service initiative and helping people with the service initiative that you create, that I think is so important. Or if you're someone like me who loves to perform and you think this will be a great outlet for me to get out there and to even embrace my talent even more, for people to see me. So I would say to those who maybe feel nervous or getting into this organization, and and you definitely probably will have those moments of doubt, to never forget that your future self probably will definitely thank you later for all of the hard work that you're putting into yourself now, that you're competing with yourself to make yourself better and not with others. And to also remember that it's your own journey and that everyone's journey is different. And regardless where you end up, whether that's at the end of the day going to Miss America, winning your state title or not, that you are who you are, and that's all you need to be great in this world.
Love it. Great job. So you're very close, very close. We talked about it earlier, less than a year of completing your journey with education as well. So tell us about your path in schooling so far. You talked about, or I said doctorate in law, and just a huge accomplishment. But what steps did you take to get to here, and why law?
Well, first, had to finish up my undergraduate degree and get my bachelor's. So I was really happy to accomplish that. I got my bachelor's from the University of Alabama in political science and history. And I've been one, honestly, I've always loved politics. I've always loved the news. I've always loved history. I've always loved being informed. And I
Same.
always feel like you can never not learn enough. That just isn't a thing. You can always learn more and more, and always just be a well-rounded person. And I gained a lot of that from just competing at such a young age because we had to always keep up with current events. But that was something, honestly, that came naturally to me. And that's one of the things, the news is always on at my house all the time, just in the background. And I love listening now to podcasts that really inform you about things that are happening, whether it's politically or about the economy or things that are happening culturally. I love learning more. And I wouldn't call myself a historian, but I love history because I am a firm believer that history can repeat itself. But if you don't know the history, then you don't know when it's going to repeat itself
That's right.
or when it has. And so that was a big drive in wanting to go to law school because I knew that I could continue my passion with not only learning more, because I think especially now going to law school, there are so many laws out there that we don't know that we should, even if you're not in law school, to protect yourself. And I think that's very important. And I'm so glad that I'm having this opportunity of privilege where I get to walk into the law school every day and to gain all this knowledge that I promise to go out. And I've been trying to teach my family and tell my family and friends about the little laws that I learn every day that we don't know that can really harm us. So that's been a big blessing in my life. But also, I want to make a difference in other people's lives, and I want to fight for people who can't fight for themselves at the moment or are going through their vulnerable moments. Because a lot of times when you're walking through the office, going to a lawyer to speak with a lawyer, you are going through some of your toughest moments in life. And so I've been really blessed this summer to work at a personal injury firm. And so it's been really great fighting for those who end up getting in serious, horrible accidents. And you're fighting up against these big companies that aren't willing to help you out or to give you any leeway. And so I love, this is a quote that I've learned with working in this area of law, that we're working for the small guy who cannot fight for themselves. And we're going to fight for them and give them the fair shot that these other big companies, corporations that may have more money might and are taking advantage of. So I'm
So
living that out
you mentioned you're
currently.
interning at a law firm. I'm going to mention that it is an all-woman law firm as well, correct?
It is. And
That's
that, oh my
amazing. I
gosh,
love
it's been
that.
great. Yes.
That's great. So you've talked a few times about your community service activism, and I kept looking at you, and I was thinking maybe she's thinking I'm not going to mention that. That's very
No.
important to me too, but I'd like to talk about that kind of stuff at the end. So
Okay.
you've received national attention and awards, and just extensive volunteer work in charitable organizations. You've mentioned what organization it was that you work for. If you could tell us again what it is, and again, tell us the background behind why you chose this specific field of activism. I know you mentioned your mom and your uncle, I think, right?
Yes. So, for those of you that didn't hear the first time, because I just gave you a little glimpse, my community service, and it's still something that I work with today, is the National Psoriasis Foundation. And at the time, I was Miss Alabama, and throughout my whole pageant career, that was my community service. Psoriasis Take Action Alabama, where I had my own support group here in the state of Alabama, where I was helping those who suffer with psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. And the whole reason for wanting to choose this particularly as my community service initiative was because of my mother and uncle that both suffer with both psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, and all the different misinformation that has been out there about, oh, it's just a simple rash. It's something that can go away with just going to Walgreens or CVS and you'll be fine. But they don't realize the other comorbidities that can come with psoriasis, as well as the link between the joint pain with psoriatic arthritis. And it is something that is rare when people do end up having both psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, but it's something that my mother has and still has today. And unfortunately, even though there are other biologic medications out on the market right now that are helping a lot of people who suffer with psoriasis to have a more normal active life, there is not a cure. And so my biggest mission right now is to try to continue to work and support the National Psoriasis Foundation and to fundraise so we can really do more research and to eventually find a cure. Because I know if we're able to find a cure for psoriasis, there will be so many other autoimmune diseases that we will also be able to cure. So that's been my biggest mission right now.
And I hate the stigmas attached with autoimmune disorders. It's not just with psoriasis, but there are others as well, and it's almost like invisible killers, and nobody wants to put any time or effort into them because everything can be kind of masked as something else. And you mentioned that.
Right.
And so, yeah, I love the work that you're doing. Again, I appreciate your time so much for the show, Tiara, or coming on the show. I have one last question for you. And
Okay.
I promise you this is going to be the hardest question you answer today.
Okay. I'm
So
ready.
I call this, who do you think you are? So who is Tiara Pennington?
Tiara Pennington is currently an aspiring baby lawyer who has a pageant background that has really fostered a lot of the confidence that you see today. And I'm really trying now as I get older, as social media has been more of an outlet for me now. And some of my free time when I'm not in school, or I just want to really connect with others and let them know that my life is far from perfect. No one is perfect, that I have challenges as well. So it gives me those moments to also be vulnerable about my journey and my story, but to also not be afraid to be feminine, to be a woman, and that I can be both, as well as dominate a male dominated field and career one day. And so that's been really my goal now, is to let people know that it's okay to be exactly who you are, which I know we talked about this a little bit before we got started. So I'm a girly girl. I'm someone who I love to dress up. I love doing things maybe that might be out of the norm, but there's sometimes it's not always fun to just stick within the norm. And I'm going to continue to be who I am and to talk about an organization that gave so much and poured so much into me as I go into the law field, to let the people know that there are women out there who are ready to step out into these different careers and fields, but they also can do it in high heels, in fashionable clothes, and still be awesome all at the same time. So that's
Turning
who I'm aspiring to be.
turning can knots into why knots, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
I love it. Tiara, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much for having me on it. This was so much fun to get to go back down memory lane and also to connect with you. It's been a minute, but it's so glad and I'm so honored again to be on the show.
Thanks.
Hey, this is Mark Narmore, and you are tuned in to the 10 Minutes with Boston Chris podcast.